the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. The Methodist movement originally came to this area. We don't exactly know what this area meant, but we had found it in some readings that it came to this area in 1825. If you think about that, that was more than 30 years before the Civil War. Just when I was reading things, that kind of put it in perspective to me that our original little church was here before the Civil War. And that just kind of hit me. It's like, wow, that really hit me. The story that I'm going to tell is the story of our church. And our church starts with August Hayden. Mr. Hayden was born in Connecticut on November 16th in 1802. He came to Ohio and was one of the faithful members of this church. At the age of 91, which would have been 1893, Mr. Hayden wrote a history of our church. Using Mr. Hayden's published history and many yellow, tattered, and worn records from other sources that I found and from other people, we're going to look back in time. It was a cold March day in 1835 when an enthusiastic group was organized as the Methodist Episcopal Church in Gazetta. Under the leadership of John J. Stedman and J. A. Burke as the pastors and W. M. Oakley as the first-class leader. There were approximately 5 or 6 members in the original group. This first small group of organized Methodists met in homes and school buildings for around 5 years. Mr. Hayden says the church, though small, did what it could, and the Holy Ghost worked through the preaching of the word, and the work soon became general, reaching out to the entire town. Many of the young families came from the old Presbyterian church that was once here in Cortland. It was located downtown somewhere, I'm not sure exactly where, but it was downtown somewhere. But the young families were looking for more. So they came to the Methodist church and they converted and they stayed. By 1840, the membership had grown to about 50 people. There was a stimulating revival meeting that was held in a block church building that at that time was owned by the Congregationalists. Following this revival meeting, it was decided that the Methodists would construct their own church building. Sufficient funds were raised, and in the spring of 1841, the building was started. Even though the building was not completed by winter, they were able to meet in it. It was our first Methodist church. This building was built on top of a hill alongside Walnut Creek on the edge of town. It was described as a very nice romantic place when you got to it, with a good cold spring of water nearby, which was quite a necessity in such a retired place. Since it was built on such a steep hill and there was no bridge to it, it was not accessible by horseback. Parishioners had to climb the hill to get to the building. Eventually, they succeeded in getting a narrow lane cut in the hopes that there would soon be a road. They were promised a road. The building stood for over 20 years before State Route 46 was built. The church stood on a parcel of land that is across the road from what is now the Centera Country Store. Many of you will also think of that as the old Landmark building. The church building was moved in 1865 to where our current church stands now. The first parsonage was purchased that same year, and it was used for 2 years before a new parsonage was built in 1867 on Park Avenue. Jackson and Bertha Seifert purchased that parsonage from the church in 1966 when another new parsonage was built on Woodview Avenue. They continue to live there today. We have a historical mystery that as I was doing research, I wasn't able to solve. A lot of the records that I saw indicated that there was a church bell that was purchased in 1874. This church building that we're in now was built in 1880. The original church didn't have a bell tower. So where was the bell put? Was there a separate bell tower, a standalone bell tower? We really don't know that information. You would recognize our first church building. It is what we know now as the Opera House. It sits in our back parking lot. In 1879, it was moved to the back of the parking lot and was positioned to face Park Avenue. It was sold that same year to the Opera House Company for the outrageous sum of money of $400. The Opera House has changed hands many times through the years, and at one point, it made its way back to us. The church sold it in 1987 to the Cortland Historical Society. The construction of our present brick building was started in the spring of 1880. It was completed and dedicated on October 23rd, 1881, at the cost of $10,000. Solomon and Elizabeth Klein made a donation of $5,600 to the church building fund. The stained glass window in the narthex right through those two doors is in their memory, and their name is on the bottom of the stained glass window. In 1886, the first Women's Home Ministry Society of the Youngstown District was organized in Cortland, and it was here at our church. Throughout the years, the name of the women's group may have changed, but their dedication to the community and to Cortland United Methodist Church has not. The group continues today under the name of Women in Faith. On Sunday evening, January 3rd, 1898, there was a severe electrical storm, and the west end of the church was struck by lightning during the worship service. The front of the church was badly damaged, including the pulpit and the first few rows of pews as the ceiling collapsed. No one was killed, but there was a very hasty exit of the worshipers. The story even tells that the current pastor at the time was the first one out the door. There were a few minor injuries from the falling plaster. This building was repaired and rededicated on October 9, 1898. In 1910, the first pipe organ was purchased for the church. Funds were raised through the untiring efforts of Dr. W. Dietrich, who had come to the church as a student pastor, and the Singler brothers, who at one time owned a big store on Main Street downtown. They convinced Andrew Carnegie of the Carnegie Institute to donate funds for half the cost of the organ, providing the church raised the funds for the other half. The total cost of the organ was $1,500. The organ was installed that same year along with some very, very needed improvements like electricity and running water and sanitation facilities and a furnace. No longer did they have to stock the potbelly stoves or wood stoves or whatever they had just to try to get the church warm in the morning. In 1927, the church steeple was deemed unsafe and it was removed. The bell is still sitting on the top floor at the top of where those stairs were, but there's no way to get the bell down without ripping out half the church. So someday, maybe we'll have money where we can actually get the bell down and it can be used again. By 1945, Cortland had become a village of approximately 1,200 people. It had one major industry, the Richards Milling Company, and that's the old mill that is down by the creek where across the road from the Mexican restaurant. That was where the original mill was. There was a bank, a number of stores, a centralized school, and two churches, the Cortland Christian Church and the Cortland United Methodist Church. The two churches shared a common office space in what's now the Lions Club building. Our church office was moved to the inside of our church building in the 1950s. Bertha Seifert served as the church secretary for 50 years before she retired in 2023. Thank you, Bertha. Many community activities were planned by both churches working together. They were learning that the true spirit of community welfare will revitalize not only their own congregations, but the entire community as well. One of the biggest changes in the church came about 1957 and 58 with the addition of the educational wing costing $90,000. Reverend Kenneth E. Burney was the pastor during that time. He was here from 1950 to 1960. It provided 14 classrooms, a parlor, and restrooms. Previously to this, Sunday school classes were held wherever there was available space, including the parsonage and some offices and businesses downtown. There were a few classes at the church that were held in any nook or cranny that could be found, and one of the classes was even held in the church kitchen. In the early 1960s, some of the new educational wing was rented to Cortland schools. They were in the midst of their new building project, and they were in need of classroom space. So for a couple of years while construction went on, the kindergarten, first grade, and second grade were here in our educational wing. And some of you may have even gone to school here. And I know a couple for sure, if you want to raise your hands. Those of you who went here. There were other changes that took place in the 60s. In 1962, the pipe organ was replaced and the sanctuary was remodeled. The communion rail was installed and new carpeting was laid. A new parsonage was built in 1966 on Woodview Avenue. Reverend Robert Wagner and his wife Mary Ellen and their 2 children were the first to occupy that space. The parsonage was used until 1995. After that, it was sold, and the conference had decided to allow churches to provide a housing allowance, so no longer were churches required to provide a parsonage for their pastors. In the 1970s, during the time when Reverend Hollingsworth was here, the property on the south side of the parking lot was purchased from the Roy Corner family. The house was rented out for many years, but it was eventually sold for $1 and moved in 1993. A memorial garden is in that place currently. The house was moved actually across the street, and it's the house that sits back a little bit off the road next to what used to be the library, the Beats Library, just down the road just a little bit. That was the house that was next to us. The early 1980s saw the installation of the elevator. It was done through a generous gift provided by Clifford Hyde in memory of his wife Edith. It made the second floor sanctuary accessible to those who are unable to climb stairs, and it has been a godsend through the years, helping people get to our sanctuary. In 1898, the Reverend Yasudas Gavadon, affectionately known as Pastor Dan, was appointed to Cortland United Methodist Church. He served here from 1989 to 2004. Many things happened during his time with us. Upgrades were made to the parsonage and to the church building with new curtains, painting, and carpeting. He was also instrumental in sharing a regular coffee hour, in starting a regular coffee hour after the worship service. The coffee hour still continues today. People began to interact with one another more, and there was a renewed enthusiasm in the fellowship of the church. At one point in the early 2000s, the congregation was quickly outgrowing our current church building. Under Pastor Dan's guidance, a vision to build a new church was born. During his tenure, there was also an increase in awareness regarding outreach and mission responsibilities. To this day, we are still involved in many of the same service projects and have added new ones along the way. We regularly support the Salvation Army, Adopt a Foot, Trumbull County Children's Services, Warren Family Mission, the Bella's Women's Center, Operation Christmas Child Shoebox Ministry, and the American Red Cross Blood Program. That's just to name a few of our long-term partners. We have also provided a meeting area for Alcoholics Anonymous for over 12 years. Every summer, There's a vacation Bible school that takes place here in our building. For years, this has been done with the help of other Cortland area churches. 2025 will mark the 25th time that a group from our church will be going to the Redbird Mission in Kentucky. The church's Kentucky Mountain Dinner sale helps to provide the funds needed to sponsor this trip. Along with our Women in Faith group, we also have a United Methodist men's group. They meet every second Saturday of the month for breakfast and fellowship, and they also take care of our building. Along with that, they started the fundraising project of the corned beef and cabbage dinner that generally takes place around St. Patrick's Day. That's been going on for 32 years, and they have sold approximately 4,000 pounds of corned beef. That's a lot. With God's grace, we hope to continue these outreach projects and add more as the years to come. Reverend David Bensel was appointed to our church in 2004 and was our pastor until 2020. He continued the vision of building a new church campus. Through the generosity of the Walter Trumbull family, who donated 10 acres of land on Everhall Road, the vision was coming to fruition with a pavilion and a storage shed that had already been built. The plans for the new facility called for adequate space to seat 350 people in the sanctuary. There are plans for a new family life center, a large kitchen, and a playground for the children. Through many community and world changes, the vision has been put on hold. For many different reasons, we have had a declining population in our area, and therefore the size of our congregation has also seen a large decline. God has big plans for our church. Our job is to remain faithful and follow Him as He leads us. The Red Bag Food Ministry was originally started by the United Methodist Women's Group many years ago under Pastor Dave's guidance. The church felt that it was important to add to that ministry. In 2015 or so, a roadside food distribution was set up. A table was put out, and potatoes and vegetables from the United Methodist Men's Garden was available during the growing season for people to stop and take whatever they needed. Little did we know how the food ministries would continue to grow. When Pastor Dave left in 2020, Reverend Joan Purnell was assigned to Cortland United Methodist Church In 2021, Damian Ruchilla, a former Lakeview High School student, approached the church as he was looking for an Eagle Scout project to do. After some discussion and collaboration, it was decided the church wanted a food pantry shed. So they built the food pantry shed, and then anyone could come at any time, day or night, to get food that they needed. The pantry was built on the side lawn by the driveway. The only time the shed is closed is during the very cold winter months. During those months, all the food we collect through the red bags is given to the Cortland Area Cares Project. Pastor Jones stayed for 2 years during the COVID outbreak and retired in 2022. This was an uncertain and scary time. With God's grace and strength and Pastor Jones' guidance and compassion, we were able to weather the storm and remain a strong and faithful congregation. Reverend Jonathan Williams was appointed in 2022 and is our current pastor. Community outreach and mission opportunities continue to grow. The art of feeding people has once again expanded when God provides a meal. Once a month, a free lunch is served to anyone who wants to come. Our most recent endeavor is that we are currently the home to the Daisy Girl Scout Troop number 80309. You'll see some of their artwork that they made for us downstairs on the bulletin boards in the fellowship hall. Improvements to the church building and property are ongoing. A new storage shed has been built on the northwest corner of the parking lot. The old shed has been removed. A porch and ramp has been installed on the front of the church with new stairs and railings. There's been a ramp that's been installed for easy access from the sanctuary to the educational wing. Plans are currently underway to build a handicap-accessible restroom off the fellowship hall. Tireless sacrifices continue to go into maintaining this historic building. The church has seen many changes through its 190 years, not only in the physical building, but in the lives of its congregation. We have celebrated together births and baptisms, confirmations and marriages. We have deeply mourned the passing of those that we love. And truly miss our family and friends who have moved away. But through all that life has thrown at us, the wonderful and the challenging, God has always been on our side, granting us comfort, strength, and joy. What does all this history mean? It means that you are part of the long line of people who had a dream of what church could be, not only for your own generation, but for the generations to come. Little stories of how the old church became the opera house, then a place to play basketball or show silent films, and then a Grange, and now back to an opera house again. Those little stories serve to make things more interesting. But the real story is still the people. Not always people who agree on everything, but people who see the real message of the whole church. The message to bring people closer into a relationship with God. Just as it has in the past, the rest will follow and become history to someone else in the future. Happy 109th anniversary.
There are two pieces of the story that I need to name that we did not hear. And they are the two that, if we are honest, are the most important. We heard a beautifully constructed highlight reel of the life of the church. But we're talking about 190 years, and we spent about 25 to 30 minutes trying to tell the story. There's so much that did not fit in that story. There are so many names and generations of families and all kinds of stories of things that happened that didn't rise to the level of, oh, historical event, we need to record this and tell everyone about it. And if you listen carefully to the timeline, there were some substantial gaps between the moments of the story we did tell. I bring that up because what matters about the church is not the highlight reel. It's the fact that the people who have gathered, who have heard that call of grace and come to be church together, keep going, living faithfully, teaching, sharing, feeding, doing the work of being the church for the community and the world, and have done that in all of those gaps that happen between the moments we talk about. Without that activity by the faithful people of the church, there is no next moment. The church would end. And it has not, because the people have kept going. And so I want us, as we think back through that, and as we look through the history that is on display throughout the building, to remember that there are a lot of stories hidden in the cracks some of which we will never know, but they are the reason that we are still here. And the second part of the story that we did not name is what you saw on the last slide of the pictures. It was a simple phrase, to be continued. Because this is not where the story ends. This is where a chapter ends, yes, because we stopped and celebrated. But we're not stopping. We're still working to build a new handicapped restroom. There's still dinners planned and VBS planned and all kinds of other things planned. And lots of things that aren't planned that are going to happen. Because we're not done. This church is here. It is full of talented and loving and energetic and, yes, some of them old people. But we're not done yet. There's more to our story. It just hasn't been written. And so I want to encourage everyone who is here to find joy in the story we have heard and a great deal of hope in it, because we get to keep writing the story. And as we do, we get to keep telling the story, the real story, the story of us, the story of the church, the story of our faith, the story that is underneath our lives. We are part of that story. And it is not done. So we celebrate today 190 years. I'm going to call that a good start. Let's keep going.